What's up, everybody? It's George Gabriel, and this is part 4 of You Are Using Logic All Wrong. In part 3, we were looking at why you don't ever want to use library because it weighs down your system with needless effects and needless buses. And frankly, it's way better to just start from scratch with a plugin and dial in the sound the way you want it so it could be exactly what you want, not some predetermined thing that somebody else from far away decides who has no idea what you want to do with your style. Now in part 4, we're going to look at why your workflow is wrong. You're going from tracks to stereo out, and instead I encourage you to use a bus system and an auxiliary system, and I'm going to show you how to set that up. Let's check this out. So you are using Logic wrong because you are going from your tracks to your stereo out. That's not how we do things. So when you go to a professional studio, yeah, you bring things up on tracks. And let's say you have a drum set, and it's like, okay, so what's a drum set? A kick, a snare, maybe a snare top, snare bottom, tom, 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 overheads, whatever. You have 8 mics, let's say. Well, as an engineer, I'm working on this and I'm getting the sounds all right on those individual channels. I'm getting the blend just right. Yeah, this drum set sounds great. Well, now I've got 8 channels. If I want to, once you have the blend, it's pretty much there. But if I want to just lower the whole thing, I don't want to have to move 8 faders. I'm going to bus them to a bus, a stereo bus. And I have 1 fader now. I have 1 fader to take the level of the drum set up or down. Same thing with bass, same thing with guitars. So the thing is, when you're organizing tracks in Logic, you want to bus them. Let's take a look. Remember when I started this whole thing and we're setting up our session, I said, don't use the output to stereo out. Actually put it on a bus. So if you put everything on a bus, then you can start organizing things together in buses. And once you put things in buses, you can collect them. So you collect all your drums together in a bus, and you collect your percussion together on another bus. You collect your vocals on a bus. You collect your background vocals on another bus. Your guitars on another bus. Your basses on another bus. Your synths on another bus. And that way you have everything that are like kind in the same family on a bus. What does that look like in Logic? Look, we have 8 audio tracks, 8 software tracks, 1 auxiliary, which is our bus. It's actually a bus. It says auxiliary. We're going to call that a bus. And speaking of real estate, while we're here, we might as well not view the legend. We're going to hide that legend. Why? Because now I've got more room. I don't need to know this thing on the side here every single time I look at this. Like, we kind of know what we're looking at here, folks. Let's get rid of this. So now, let me get out of the mixer and let me dial up some drums. So here's my drum set. Okay, there's my drums. Now, I'm going to put those on a drum bus. I'm going to call my bus 1 drums. Now, let's, for the sake of argument, I'm not going to use a real bass, although I should, because you should always use real bass. I'm going to dial up a bass. So let's just use a synth bass. Let's go to our ES1. Let's just get a nice little simple synth bass. So let me just do a little tracking here. And by the way, why does Logic start at bar 1? Here's another thing you can do to improve your workflow. This is a bonus. See this little area? Well, I know they want you to use the count in, but I never do that. I always start at bar 0. So if you get your cursor just right, it turns into that. And now you're going to see where it says start 0, 1, 1, 1. Ah, refreshing. Now I can get my click track going. I go to my drum track. Okay, so let me just get that little performance captured, and there's my drums, right? Let's throw a little quantization on this puppy. In fact, I'm going to quantize it all. So now I've got this little headway. Actually, things start at bar 1 anyway, right? So you don't start at bar 1. You give yourself no. You're like, well, that's what the count-in's for. Yes, but no. I want to see bar 0. I want to start from bar 0. So that's my counting. So now let's add our bass. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is bus 1's my drums. Bus 2 is going to be my bass. So I'll just die up a little Yamaha keyboard here. Whatever. Okay, so I just dialed that in, and now I'm going to set this as bus 3 for my keyboard. Now, if I dial up my little mixer, you will see that I have my buses. My drums are going to bus 1, that's here, and my bass should be going to bus 2, but somehow it's going to bus 3. Let's change that. Boom. So now I can label these bus 1, bus 2, bus 3, and I can say, hey, bus 1's drums, bus 2, even though it didn't do an order, let's just, bus 2 is bass, and bus 3 is keys. Why am I doing this? I'm doing this because I'm putting like kind things together. Sometimes I do multiple tracks of drums, sometimes I'll do multiple tracks of percussion, but they're the same type of sound. Same with the keyboards, same with the bass. So we want to EQ and compress them differently on the bus level. That's what starts to get a sound that makes a record sound. What you don't want to do is go from tracks to stereo out, because now everything's just going over to stereo out, and now you've got this massive wall here and you have no control. And this way you can start tucking your mixes like, hey, you know, the keys need to come up a little bit. Hey, just move your key bus 1 fader up. Hey, the drums are getting lost now that I have all this other stuff in. Move your drum fader up. That is the proper way to organize your tracks in Logic, not going from your track to the stereo out. This is how you do it. If you want that record sound, that is the process that you need to use to group things together in like-kind instruments using buses. And if you're going to affect them, you're going to use auxes, but that's not part of this video. If you want to look at that, check out my other video about how to use effects properly in Logic, and that'll show you how to do that. That's it for part 4 of You Are Using Logic All Wrong. Check out part 5 where I go over key commands and special tools that you might not be aware of that can completely change your workflow and make you more efficient. As always, like these videos and click the bell icon to subscribe, and I'll see you next time on George Gabriel Music.